Hello, everyone, and welcome to Right Reason, the show where right makes might, with our host, Dr. Charles Rice from Notre Dame's Law School, Professor Emeritus,
Yes, sir.
author, celeb, everything.
Keep going.
Yeah, we put this show together when Dr. Rice and I were talking because we thought that there's sort of a bit of a deprivation, right? A lack of knowledge on the part of people about the knowledge aspect of the faith, about the ability to reason, some of even the more basic philosophical things, even more germane than some of the theological problems that we have. I had a professor in seminary who said, bad philosophy leads to bad theology. And so we thought, well, let's talk about the philosophical aspects of things. But so that's the genesis of the show. That's why we're talking about it. First couple episodes, we've spoken at length about knowledge and how we know things and what's an idea and all of that. But we finished up the last episode saying, okay, if we've got two conflicting points, for abortion, for example, abortion's right, abortion's wrong, where do these two places go? And we just wrapped up beginning a discussion about the magisterium.
Right.
When Catholics talk about the magisterium, what are they talking about? What does that word mean?
They're talking about the teaching authority of the church. The church has three functions: to teach, to rule. That doesn't mean they rule Detroit. It means that they rule, they make internal rules for the governance of the church. Teach, rule, and sanctify. Mm-hmm. The teaching authority is possessed by the Pope and the bishops in union with the Pope. And the magisterium is that teaching authority. Mm-hmm. And so
it's not a place. You can't go to the magisterium.
That's correct.
Right.
Right. It is that teaching authority. It's exercised by the Pope and the bishops in union with the Pope. And we got into it last time because we were talking about the practical reason. And just to quickly recap that, the object of the practical reason is the good. Mm-hmm. And the good is that which is in accord with the nature of the thing you're talking about. You did not have a barbed wire sandwich for lunch, right? Because you're not a trash compactor, all right?
Although sometimes they taste like that.
It would not be good for you, all right? So the good is that which is in accord with the nature of the thing we're talking about. And St. Thomas Aquinas said, well, there are basic inclinations of human nature that we know and are practically self-evident. We know them connaturally. We know them to be good. The inclination to seek the good, mm-hmm. including our highest good, who's God. The inclination to preserve yourself. Third, the inclination to preserve the species, mm-hmm. to have children, all right? Fourth, the inclination to live in community. Mm-hmm. One of the worst punishments you can inflict on somebody is solitary confinement, right? And the fifth would be the inclination to use your intellect and will to know and to choose. Mm-hmm. And what you do then is you reason, which is the third act of the intellect. First act of the intellect is the formation of the idea, mm-hmm. door. Second act is judgment. That is a door. Mm-hmm. Now we can talk about truth.
Right.
And it's true because the statement corresponds to the reality.
Right.
And the difference between that realist epistemology, which is the science of knowing, and what passes for philosophy today, the difference is that in that realist epistemology, with Aristotle, Augustine, Thomas, and so on and so forth, reason can know the essence of things. We can know the essence of the outside world. We can know the essence of moral truth. All right? So you have that ability.
Well, just a second, just in case some people are a little confused. So we can know the essence of moral truth, but isn't that just your opinion versus my opinion? I mean, there's no way to get to the truth, is there?
Well, it's, yes. I mean, you know that, for example, the first principle of the speculative reason, you know that opposites can't both be right, right? That you know that. And what's overlooked today is that there are some things that are self-evident. That's what is missing in a lot of what passes for learning in this area. It is self-evident, the principle of sufficient reason, that everything has a reason. That's how you know there's a God. The existence of God is not self-evident. It is in itself. If you knew everything about God, existence would be his essence, and it would be self-evident. But it's not self-evident to us because of our limited intellects. We have to reason to the existence of God. And you can, because you have that self-evident principle of sufficient reason. And you think, wait a minute, if there was ever a time when there was nothing, there could never be anything.
Right.
That's how you know there always had to be an eternal being. And what else can you know? Well, that's where Thomas talks about the practical reason, right? The first principle of the practical reason is that the good is that which all things seek. You put a brick and a hamburger on the floor, and your dog is going to go for the hamburger, I guarantee it. All right? All right. If he doesn't, you got a problem. All right?
Or he's got really sharp teeth.
Yeah, right.
And one heck of a digestive system.
So the good is that which all things seek. And the first principle of the natural law is that we ought to seek the good and avoid evil. Now, so what is the good for human beings? You see? That's where we get into the inclinations.
Right.
And Thomas says we know in a practically self-evident way that these basic inclinations are good. That is, in accord with human nature.
Right.
I mentioned the 5. Right? Seek the good. Preserve yourself, preserve the species, live in community, know and choose. And then what you do is you reason from those basic inclinations. Reasoning, the second act of the intellect is the judgment. That is a door. That's either true or false, depending on whether it corresponds to the reality. The third act is reasoning. All right, classic major premise, minor premise, conclusion. All dogs are mortal. Lassie is a dog. Lassie is mortal. All right? So you reason to the fact that we have a basic inclination to live in community. And you reason to the fact that theft is wrong. We have a basic inclination to preserve the species. You reason to the fact that sex should be reserved for marriage. You reason to the fact that marriage is permanent. Marriage is boy and girl. Just in terms of reasoning. And we have revelation to aid us on this. St. Thomas tells us that the 4 kinds of law are the eternal law, which is basically God's concept of things. And then the natural law, which is, I'm not talking about the law of rock, that you drop it in a pond, it's going to sink. I'm talking about the law built into the nature of rational human beings, which is our participation in the eternal law, God's concept of things. Then you have the divine law, all right? Where'd that come from? After the fall, we were kind of messed up, all right?
And we've gotten so much better.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. After the fall, human nature was disordered. Didn't become evil, but it was disordered.
Explain for a moment when we say disordered. People hear disordered and they think we mean insane.
No. I mean,
what does disordered mean?
In the original creation, everything was in harmony. The intellect, the senses, the passions, everything was in harmony. And
so there was an order to everything.
Oh, yes. And the original sin disrupted that. It was a rebellion. Man sought to be God. And at that point, then, a lot of things happened. Death entered the world. because there was no death before then.
Right.
And our intellects were disordered in the sense of being weakened, no longer in harmony. Or
They're thrown out of order.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
when the church said, because a lot of people, even like in reference, to the, they take exception when the church says, that homosexuality is disordered. They'll cling on that and say, see, you're saying horrible things about people who are gay. That's not what disordered means when the church uses that term.
Right.
It means out of the order it should be in.
Exactly, because it is the reason why the inclination to homosexual acts is disordered, meaning out of order, is that it's an inclination to an act which itself is disordered.
Correct.
That's why an inclination, if you like bright, shiny things, and you have an inclination to shoplifting,
Yeah.
that's disorder.
Right.
That inclination is disordered because it's a disorder to something that's wrong, all right? And you're not judging the subjective culpability of the guy.
Right.
What you're saying is that in the order of things, that's not in accord with human
out
nature.
Of order. Right.
It's not in accord with human nature. So you know that these inclinations are good, and you reason, for example, to the fact that theft is wrong. What kind of a community would it be, right? You reason the fact that sex should be reserved for marriage, should be male and female. Contraception is wrong, abortion is wrong, whatever. And at that point, as we left off last time,
Right.
what do you do when people sincerely disagree? And we're not throwing rocks on anybody.
Right.
What do you do when people sincerely disagree about any of these questions?
Well, you have to, because you have to solve this, because you have to say you can't have. Let's say that somebody who's Planned Parenthood, whatever, is really sincerely, honestly believes that abortion is right, and so let's presume they believe their rhetoric, and the pro-life forces clearly believe their rhetoric,
Right.
what they're saying. So here are two groups clearly, sincerely believing what they're saying, for the sake of the discussion. Okay, where do you go?
Right.
Where do you go? There must be a way to arrive at the truthfulness of the proposition.
Yeah,
Abortion is murder and killing and evil and wrong, or it's the opposite, which is good. And it's interesting, you never hear the pro-abortion forces ever saying this is a good. It's always regrettable.
I know.
It's a sorry thing. Well, wait a minute. If it's fine, well, why isn't it a good?
Yeah, right.
Why is it regrettable?
Right.
Why
exactly.
is abortion regrettable if you say it's a right? How many other rights do you have that are regrettable?
Or as they say, it should be safe, legal, and rare.
Yeah, why?
But why? Interestingly, Bernard Nathanson, who was one of the few people who actually got together in New York and put together the abortion movement in the United States. He presided himself over 30,000 abortions.
Yeah.
And I met him several times, talked with him about this, and he became a Christian, then became a Catholic, all right? And he has said this many times. He said, I didn't know it was wrong.
Yeah.
You say, how could you not know it was wrong? And that's where the limitation of our ability and right to judge comes in. Wait, I don't know what's going on inside his head, but I fully believe him when he said, I didn't know it was wrong.
Yeah.
And the most we can say is, hey, look, what you were doing was wrong because it's contrary to human nature, and it's contrary to the divine law. See, the divine law came in because mankind was in a confused state, a weakened state. And God had mercy on us and gave us the divine law, which is the Old Testament and the New Testament, all right? And The divine law is a specification of the natural law.
Right.
He gave us the 10 Commandments, which are a specification of the natural law, so that even in our post-fall weakened condition, we still can know with absolute certainty that adultery, for example, is wrong.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Because we have the Word of God on there.
And this aspect is going to lead us straight into what the magisterium is and what a great gift it is, and that we have access to it.
But that's true.
And that is exactly what we're going to talk about. Whenever I do this, I'm always going to a break. That's what we're going to talk about right after we come back from this break. Please stay with us. Welcome back to Right Reason with Dr. Charles Rice. We're going to get right into the magisterium now. We started the show with that. We had to get into that kind of background explanation.
Right.
So now here we are ready to say, what is the magisterium and why do Catholics appeal to it?
Okay. The magisterium, John Paul said, is a great gift from God to enable us to form our consciences. The magisterium is simply the teaching authority of the Church, which is possessed by the Pope and the bishops in union with the Pope, right? Cardinal Ratzinger, before he got his new job as Pope Benedict XVI, in 1991, gave an address to all the bishops of the United States in Dallas. It's published by the Knights of Columbus as a pamphlet, but you can get it on the Vatican website. Mm-hmm. And in that address, he talked about conscience. And he raised the question, is it possible that Adolf Eichmann, Hitler, Stalin are saints? Is it possible that if some of those people really believed that what they were doing was right, that they are saints, all right? And remember, the 3 things you have to do with your conscience is form it, follow it if it's clear, and never act on a doubtful conscience. Resolve the doubt or take the safer course. Mm-hmm. And he went into a discussion of this in the context of Cardinal Newman's famous line in the letter to Norfolk. He said, I don't think religion should be brought into after-dinner toast, but if it is, I will toast the Pope, but conscience first. And Benedict took that up. Mm-hmm. And he said, I agree with that, mm-hmm. which might surprise you.
Not really.
Oh, no. He said, I agree with that.
All right.
And the reason he said is that conscience needs the magisterium. That we have a false idea of authority. This is the liberal idea. This is the Enlightenment individualistic idea. We have a false idea that authority is external, is the external imposition of coercion on us. Mm-hmm. And that freedom means liberation from, authority, a liberation from any rules. I mean, freedom is, hey, I do whatever I want, mm-hmm. all right? And the point is that that's not true.
Right.
And, as we said before, you're free to put water in your gas tank, but you're no longer free to drive your car.
Exactly.
And so Benedict went into this whole question of conscience, and he said, well, what is conscience? And he talked about it in terms of a concept that St. Thomas used, synderesis, which is really our whole moral equipment that we have for making moral decisions. And Cardinal Ratzinger said, let's approach it in terms of another concept, a Platonic concept. anamnesis, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's amnesia? Forgetfulness, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the an is the negative. Anamnesis is remembrance.
Right.
Remembrance of what? And it's really a fascinating thing. He said we have built into us a remembrance of the way things were before the fall.
Right.
And this relates to the first basic inclination that Thomas talked about, the inclination to seek the good,
Mm-hmm.
you see? And we have that basic inclination there, that basic anamnesis, all right? And the role of the magisterium is to help that formation of conscience,
Mm-hmm.
to recall those truths to the human being. I mean, conscience comes first. As Condor Ratzinger said, if it weren't for conscience, you wouldn't need a papacy. So think about it, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, because conscience is the reason why the papacy exists in this moral sense.
Squirrels and trees don't need a papacy.
That's right. That's exactly right. And so he said that conscience, if you look at conscience, you can look at it in several ways. It is an act, as St. Thomas says. It's the act of judging the rightness or wrongness. It's also, you also look at it in terms of that anamnesis. Mm-hmm. And he said, what about Hitler and Eichmann, Stalin? He said, well, and he has said elsewhere and here, ultimately we can't, only God can really judge what is inside somebody's heart and mind. Mm-hmm. But he said, the least we can say is that they were at fault in failing to recognize the anamnesis in their souls, mm-hmm. in failing to observe that recollection and failing to form their consciousness.
Now, is there a presupposition, therefore, that everybody, and I don't mean people who are, mentally ill or something,
right.
But just, regular folks, is there a presupposition there, then, that everybody has this remembrance?
Yes. In fact, in that address, 1991, to the American bishops, then Cardinal Ratzinger said, that's the basis for mission, for missionary activity. Mm-hmm. Because people have within themselves this remembrance and this desire for what
truth
is true.
Right.
Even if they don't know it, mm-hmm. All right? Even if they don't know it. And they have a right to be assisted. And the magisterium, we look at in this individualistic era as if it's just an authoritarian, really vindictive almost imposition
right.
on us from outside, contrary to our nature. It's just the opposite.
Right.
It's a great help.
That's the assist to your nature.
Right, and so when you get questions like abortion or contraception, you say, well, how do you resolve those? And the Catholic Church provides that way of resolving those issues through the magisterium. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem with the whole private judgment Protestant approach. Mm-hmm.
If you don't have a magisterium, again, if you don't have that outside authority to appeal to and help guide you,
right,
you can't ever be certain.
Right.
You simply can't. There's no certitude.
Exactly. And further you get into further questions. What's your obligation toward the magisterium? Is the Pope infallible? It certainly doesn't mean that everything he does is infallible, right? He could be a Cubs fan, right?
So, God forbid he could be a Southern Cal fan.
Yeah, right. But
That would make him a heretic.
It would make him a total apostate, yeah. But the magisterium is central to this whole thing. And I think that's why the Obama administration and the whole secular liberal regime is at war with the Catholic Church.
Right.
Because the Catholic Church makes the claim that there is a truth, that we know it. The truth, with a capital T, is a person, Jesus Christ. And as Paul VI said in Ecclesiam Suam, he said, Jesus Christ lives in the church, in the Catholic Church, and teaches through the church. And that claim is totally at war with the New York Times, LA Times, and all the rest, you know. And that's why the regime goes after the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
Especially because its teaching on life and marriage is so hostile to the current regime.
You know, it seems to me that for people who are coming into the church, not, you know, adults who are converting to the church either from other Christian faiths or non-Christian, it seems like they should get a little warning label.
Saying what?
On the back side of that membership card.
Yeah.
You know, saying, watch out, danger ahead. You're about to be hated.
Oh, yeah. I think that's true. I mean, that's as we say in Mishawaka, Indiana, it's a whole nother subject. I mean, we can get into that because the role of the church, in fact, that is part of what we will be taking care of in future sessions here. The question is, what about the social teaching of the church?
Sure.
And the moral teaching of the church? And how do they relate? We'll get into the unjust law. Because all that, these things all hang together.
What, before we have to wrap up the show here, what is the magisterium infallible?
The church has infallibility, right? It was not defined as such until 1869, right? 1870. That doesn't mean church wasn't infallible. The Catholic Church makes the claim that when it uses its full horsepower, it can't make a mistake, right?
That's a pretty audacious claim.
Yes, it is. There are limits to this. In a document in 1997, I think it was, Ad Tuendam Fidem, John Paul II clarified these things. He talked about definitive teachings and non-definitive teachings, and the teachings that are infallible, we have to give the adherence of faith. And he went on and he said, even teachings that are non-definitive, that don't claim to be definitive, he said the Catholic people have a duty not to act against them.
Right.
See, this is in the Second Vatican Council, Lumen Gentium number 25, where it says that the statements, the teachings of the Pope, even when not infallible, when they don't claim to be infallible, are entitled to religious submission of will and of mind. This is serious business.
Well, it's not only serious business just for the individual and, vis-a-vis heaven.
Right.
It's also serious business on how people interact with each other here in this life, and
That's true.
and sort of dictates their relationships with each other.
That's right.
What we say. Well, that's that'll take us out and wrap us up for this show.
Oh, we'll get into that next time. We'll get into this in relation to the whole question of freedom.
Yeah.
What is freedom?
Yeah, what is freedom? Greatly misunderstood topic.
Yeah, okay.
Well, that seems like a good jumping off point for the next show.
Okay.
So, Doctor, thank you very much
you.
again, as always.
My pleasure.
Michael Voris here with Dr. Charles Rice, wrapping up this episode of Right Reason, where right makes right, might. I said it again. I'll never get that down. Where right makes might. God bless you. Bye-bye now.